My sister's husband cheated on her. She decided to get a divorce. I decided to get a divorce too. The reason was simple. I was a sister girl through and through. Growing up, I never had much of an opinion of my own. I listened to my sister about everything. She was smart, beautiful, capable, successful, tough, sharp-tongued, and always knew what to do. Whatever path she took, I followed. She got married to the cold-faced finance titan from the Vale family who was constantly on magazine covers. So I married his brother. She became a rich man's wife. I followed her into the rich wife lifestyle. Now she wanted a divorce. Naturally, I didn't want to stay in that family either. That same night, right after I announced I want a divorce, my bad-tempered race car driver husband pinned me against the closet doors with red-rimmed eyes, one hand gripping my waist.
I didn't cheat on you, so why the hell am I getting divorced?
Financial world favorite Elias Vale made a rare appearance in the entertainment headlines today, and not alone. The photos showed him with his ex-girlfriend and legendary one that got away, Lila Monroe. In the pictures, they stood side by side outside a private club in London. More than enough to send New York's upper circles into a frenzy over a full-blown Old Flames reunited drama. My sister, Avery Quinn, stared at her phone screen for a full 3 minutes. Then, she placed her phone on the table and looked at me.
Chloe, I'm divorcing Elias. What about you? If you're divorcing, I'm divorcing.
Avery wasn't surprised at all. She calmly picked up her coffee and took a sip.
Okay, I'll have my lawyer draft the papers. Go upstairs and pack.
The moment she finished speaking, she called a friend famous for handling brutal divorce cases. Then, she turned around in her heels and headed for the master bedroom to pack. I followed her upstairs at a leisurely pace. Honestly, I wasn't nervous at all. It was only a divorce. Not the end of the world. Besides, I'd never been the type who could make decisions on her own. If Avery was leaving, then I was leaving too. Avery and I weren't biological sisters. A massive earthquake took my entire family. Avery's father was a soldier. Her mother was a surgeon. They brought me home from a temporary shelter and adopted me. For a long time after that, I was like a broken puppet. I didn't talk, didn't go outside, didn't want to see people. The slightest disturbance could make me tremble with fear. Avery was 2 years older than me. She treated me like a little wolf guarding her territory. Nobody was allowed to touch me. When we were in elementary school, someone locked me inside a restroom and dumped cold water over my head. Avery carried over an entire bucket of filthy water and poured it over the culprit from head to toe. Someone hid my textbooks. She threw their backpacks straight into the garbage station. Someone yanked out my hair. During lunch break, Avery took a pair of children's safety scissors and cut a bald patch right on top of that kid's head. Growing up, whenever I was bullied, Avery was always the first one charging forward. Either way, once Avery took me under her wing, nobody dared mess with me again. But she was 2 grades ahead of me. Eventually, I became terrified of one thing. What if she graduated and left? Who would protect me then? So I made a very important decision. I was going to attend the same university as Avery. My emotional intelligence wasn't exactly impressive, but I was smart enough. I skipped a grade in middle school, then skipped another in high school. In the end, I actually caught up to her. We took the college entrance exams together and got into the same university. We even chose the exact same major, fashion design. The reason was simple too. I wanted us to be assigned to the same dorm. After graduation, Avery secured funding and started an independent fashion studio with me. She was the face of the brand, the model, the networker, the client charmer, the one pitching investors. I handled sketches, patterns, alterations, and sleepless nights perfecting details. She was the brilliant, striking founder. I was the little craftsperson hiding behind her, quietly making clothes. 3 years later, the studio built a name for itself. Our brand expanded from private custom orders into a high-end ready-to-wear line. Then, Avery married our investor, Elias Vale, the current head of New York's old money Vale family. Investment banking, luxury funds, real estate capital. His fingerprints were everywhere. Cold, controlled, handsome and rich to an unreasonable degree. Their wedding shook all of Manhattan. As for me, not long after the wedding, I followed right behind and rushed into marriage with Elias's younger brother, Jace Vale. Yes, that Jace Vale, the famous maniac of the racing world, professional race car driver, rich bad boy, private club owner, walking tabloid material, a face so attractive it looked illegally rendered. The complete opposite of Elias. Wild, dangerous, and nearly impossible to tame. For a harmlessly obedient girl like me to win over a man like Jace. Normal methods clearly weren't going to work. So I chose something unconventional. I decided to stage a chance accident. Back then, I practically lived in Avery and Elias's newlywed mansion. Officially, I was there for free meals, but I was waiting for Jace. Finally, one day, he showed up. After dinner, Jace got ready to leave. I timed it perfectly. Just as he started driving away, I very accidentally launched myself in front of the car. The next second, the world spun. The bumper lightly clipped me. I conveniently flew about 2 feet. Looking down, I discovered nothing more than a pitiful scrape on my knee. So I made a decisive choice. I stayed down. After all, if I claimed internal injuries, nobody could prove otherwise. Avery was the first to rush over. She pulled me into her arms, panic written all over her face.
Are you okay? Where are you hurt? My head, arm, leg, everything hurt.
I immediately curled against her with the saddest expression I could manage. Avery knew me too well. She only had to take one look at my overly affected little act to find out I was faking it 100%, though she clearly hadn't figured out what I was trying to do. Even so, her first instinct was still to take my side and start attacking her brother-in-law. Jace stood beside the car with one hand in his pocket.
Hey, I didn't even touch the gas pedal.
His eyebrow lifted, and his tone was lazy and infuriating.
Are you seriously trying to run an insurance scam on me?
I don't care. You hit me.
I gritted my teeth and abandoned all shame.
You have to take responsibility.
To secure a lifetime of being Avery's sister-in-law, I shouted loudly enough for the entire front yard to hear.
Jace, take her to the hospital.
Eventually, Elias stepped in and ended the farce. Avery tried to come too. I secretly pushed her away. Jace feared nothing except his older brother. With a dark expression, he walked over, scooped me up, shoved me into the passenger seat, and drove off. The speed nearly launched my soul out of my body. I clutched my seatbelt and screamed.
Slow down!
Jace kept his eyes on the road. His tone remained careless.
I can't. I'm worried that if we get there too late, that little scrape on your knee will heal up. So all that effort was for nothing?
My face instantly turned red. I shrank toward the door and looked at him pitifully. His gaze flicked over me. Then he suddenly cursed.
Shit. Don't look at me like that.
He sounded fierce on the surface, but the car really did slow down.
Thank you.
All right, tell me what today's performance was really for.
Without looking at me, he frowned. What else could I do? I had to tell the truth.
I want to marry you.
For a moment, Jace looked like he'd choked on my honesty.
Wouldn't have guessed. You're tiny, but your ambitions are huge.
Then he glanced me up and down.
But there are actually a lot of women want to marry me. You'd better move fast.
My greatest strength has always been taking advice, so I immediately reached out and grabbed the hem of his clothing. Jace was driving. The moment I grabbed him, his whole body stiffened. His free hand instantly pressed against his waist.
What are you doing?
I looked at him innocently.
Didn't you tell me to hold on to you?
The tips of Jace's ears turned red immediately.
Shit.
To this day, I still don't know what exactly attracted him. All I know is that 3 days later, he really took me to get married. I never asked why. And I didn't want to. The result was what mattered. From that day forward, I officially moved into Avery's luxury social circle. At first, Jace had no interest in living under the same roof as his brother and sister-in-law. But I have principles. The only condition under which I agreed to marry him was that I got to live with Avery after the wedding. Jace's face darkened on the spot. Yet, on our wedding night, he still carried my suitcases into the Vale family estate himself. He was the classic rich playboy. No proper job. His life revolved around racetracks, clubs, parties, and having fun. Basically, however you looked at it, he seemed like someone living off his brother. So naturally, I came to the conclusion. He lived off his brother, and I lived off him. By rounding up, that meant I lived off Elias too. The logic was flawless. Besides, Elias gave Avery $2 million a month in spending money. Jace had his own family trust and monthly allowance. He spent money recklessly, but he was loyal enough to split his share with me. As a result, I could do absolutely nothing and still watch money flow steadily into my account every month. All major household expenses were covered by Elias. When we went shopping, we used the supplementary black card he gave Avery. As for me, I barely had anything I actually needed to spend money on. After 2 years of marriage to Jace, my savings had grown by 8 figures. Lying on a genuine leather sofa that practically smelled like money, I found myself sincerely thinking over and over again. Being a sister-first girl really was worth it. I'd known it all along. Following Avery's lead was never wrong.